We spent $2,500 on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro, and we've been using it on various projects like short films and even some ads that I'm not allowed to speak about right now. But how does it stack up to the $11,000 Sony PXW-FX9? Let's find out. Now, I should note that we only had the FX9 for 4 days, and obviously we spent most of that time actually shooting our project, our short film. So I didn't have that much time to test out the FX9. So this is going to be more of like a first impressions versus the Blackmagic kind of video. And I also didn't have enough time to actually shoot side-by-sides with the Blackmagic and the FX9, but I'm going to show some footage from similar environments in similar conditions. If you're interested in some more side-by-side type comparisons, we did a video on the FX9 versus the Sony a7S III, so if you want to go check that out after you watch this video, you're welcome to do that. And of course, special shout out to Panavision Johannesburg for providing the package that this camera was a part of. Now, they did not sponsor this video or this channel, but they did give us a lot of equipment for our short film. So special thanks to them. But let's get into it. So both of these cameras are in Blackmagic and Sony's cinema line of cameras, but the FX9 is a full frame 6K sensor that downsamples to 4K, and the BMP CC 6K Pro has a Super 35mm 6K sensor. It's in the name. Now the FX9 can shoot 4K DCI up to 60 frames per second, and the Blackmagic can shoot 6K at 50 frames per second in 16:9 and 60 frames per second at 2.4:1 aspect ratio. Now, I'm not entirely sure why Sony decided to make a 6K sensor camera that doesn't shoot 6K, but I guess they just decided that squashing 22 million pixels into the same space as 8 million pixels was a better idea. I don't know. But sensor size doesn't actually matter when it comes to color. And again, I'm sorry that I don't have direct side-by-side comparison footage, but you know, it's kind of similar a little bit. I don't know. We shot 4K S-Log3 on the FX9 using the XAVC-I codec at 250 megabits per second, and we shot 6K B-RAW on the Blackmagic. And with absolutely zero scientific data and just moving sliders around on Lumetri in Premiere Pro and in DaVinci Resolve, I found that they have similar dynamic range, but with RAW on the Blackmagic, you can really see that there's just a little bit extra room for color grading. The RAW is really the distinguishing factor between these two cameras. When we were grading our recent short film that we shot on the FX9, we found that it was slightly more difficult to bring back the highlights when shooting directly into the sunlight. But on the Blackmagic with the RAW option, it's a little bit easier because it's just all the data that was captured that day, not just the flat look of the S-Log3. And in our personal opinion, and it's just an opinion, we prefer the skin tones coming from the Blackmagic. They're just slightly more forgiving, maybe due to the RAW as well. And it really cannot be understated just how well Blackmagic RAW footage is optimized for DaVinci Resolve. Even editing it in Premiere Pro is really easy. Now, I've got a really beefy system, and I didn't really notice any difference between the footage from the FX9 and the Blackmagic. But when editing 6K RAW is pretty much the same experience as editing 4K H.264, you know, you can really see that Blackmagic have been working on their pipeline. But if we're being honest, we're literally nitpicking here. The XAVC-I codec is amazing on the FX9, and you'll definitely be able to get where you need to be color-wise if you expose correctly. They're both great. So all in all, great color from both. But let's take a quick break. Do you like watching this video and you like watching our other videos? Then smash the like button, huh? I mean, it's in the name, and if you like it, you can show us by pressing the like. And then YouTube's like, oh, people like this, and then they show it to other people. So I would appreciate that a lot. Thanks. The autofocus on the Blackmagic is absolute garbage. It's horrendous. You have to like long press on something, and then when you move, it struggles to track it. So for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to say that the Blackmagic doesn't have autofocus because it's not reliable and it's slow, it's bad. Whereas the FX9 has one of the best autofocus systems in the world. Sony is known for their autofocus, and the FX9, even though it's a couple of years old, is just awesome. It has two autofocusing modes, face priority and face only. And the really cool thing about the face only mode is that if your subject is walking into frame and then they leave, it'll actually stay on that same plane of focus until the next face walks in. And that's really cinematic. It's much better than just pulling straight to the background unless you really want to highlight something in the background. So I think the autofocus on the FX9 is really good. Blackmagic doesn't have it, so I guess I can't really do a comparison. The Sony FX9 has a ton of buttons on the side of the camera body. So if you need to change a setting, the chances are pretty good that there's going to be a button that's going to save you a little bit of time from going into the menu system. But on the Blackmagic body, there's very few buttons. But it doesn't really matter because everything can be controlled by the 5-inch touchscreen on the back of the camera. Every option that you would probably need is on the screen at all times. So if you need to change something, you can just touch and then move it around, and it's really easy. The menu system on the FX9, however, is not so good. Sony is notorious for their bad menu systems, but you know, it's really in depth. You can change absolutely everything about that camera. You just have to go digging for it. I'm sure if you spend a bit of time on it, you will find what you're looking for, no problem. So maybe it's not that much of a big deal, but Blackmagic really has one of the most intuitive, easiest, and just simplest menu systems on any camera. The FX9 natively uses the BP30 to 70 batteries, and you can get around 3 to 4 hours from one of those. The Blackmagic uses the NPF 550 batteries internally, and that only lasts for around 25 to 40 minutes. But you know what? It doesn't even matter because both of these cameras can be powered externally with V-mount or gold mount batteries using a D-tap straight into camera. And there's just so many benefits to using one of these batteries instead of the internal batteries, since they last a lot longer, 6 to 8 hours, and you can power multiple accessories from it, monitors, wireless transmitters, etc. Both of these cameras have built-in ND filters from 2 to 6 stops. The Blackmagic has 3 hard stop settings for the ND filters at 2, 4, and 6 stops. But the FX9 has a variable ND, so you can be at ND 3.2 or ND 5.9. So it's really handy to have that option when you don't want to change your ISO, aperture, or your shutter. You can just adjust the ND slightly and then you're there. Another useful filmmaking tool is this YouTube channel. So why don't you press subscribe and then browse the channel when you're done with this video? I'm pretty sure you'll find something that you like. The FX9 screen is a detachable 2.4 million dot screen that comes with a viewfinder attachment. The viewfinder is really handy in like bright days when you want to block out all the sunlight and just see exactly what you're capturing. But you can also very easily just take off that screen and mount a monitor, 5-inch, 7-inch, whatever you need, and then you can have a live view of what the camera is seeing on there. The Blackmagic, on the other hand, has a 5-inch screen that is attached to the camera body that can also tilt up and down. This is a huge improvement over the previous pocket cameras where it was just a fixed screen at the back of the camera, and you pretty much had to have an external monitor unless you were just looking straight into the back of the camera. But as I said earlier, the Blackmagic screen is super useful and the touch screen is actually super responsive. So it's really good. The Blackmagic uses the Canon EF mount, and there are a ton of really good lenses made for the EF mount. But that mount does mean that you can only use EF mount lenses, so it's not very adaptable. The FX9 has the Sony E mount, and that's basically the opposite. You can add adapters for EF glass, Nikon glass, and of course PL mount glass, which is what we used to shoot our short film with. So yeah, I'm not 100% on board with Blackmagic using the EF mount, since with the previous 6K you were able to take off that mount and put on like some kind of hack for a PL mount, but because there's ND filters in that same space right now, I don't think that PL mount lenses would work on this camera. Blackmagic, I think you should get a mirrorless mount. So which camera do I prefer? The 240,000 Rand FX9 or the 55,000 Rand Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro? Well, if you look at it, I think the FX9 is the better camera. I think it has the most versatility for medium budget level productions, but at the same time, what you get for the Blackmagic is just so incredible that I'm finding it very hard to justify the price. So it's tough. I've used the Blackmagic to shoot a really high-end ad for a major brand that I can't talk about, but let's just say they were really happy with the result and we're actually shooting more for them. So with that in mind, I find it really hard to justify the expense of the FX9. However, the FX6 is a camera that I'm really interested in. It's basically an FX9 but smaller and cheaper at 100,000 Rand less. So I want to give that a try, but if you want to see us review that camera, then hit subscribe and let us know down in the comments. And while you're down there, might as well smash the like button. Just want to say another thank you to Panavision Johannesburg for providing the gear that this camera was a part of for our short film. Again, they did not sponsor us and they did not sponsor the channel. But you know, it's really cool that a major rental house like Panavision would give gear to a bunch of young, ambitious filmmakers. So thanks so much to them. And until next time, go out there, stay safe, and make your movie.